It was a week of revelation, confusion, and contradiction on Parliament Hill as federal party leaders gave differing views on that top-secret report on foreign interference. Green Party leader Elizabeth May was the first to read it, to see the names and the allegations, telling Canadians the reaction was overblown. But NDP leader Jagmeet Singh read that same report and said he was more worried than ever, that there have been MPs that are traitors to Canadian democracy, but he can't say who they are or if they still sit in Parliament. Meanwhile, there's Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre still refuses to read the report, saying he doesn't want his hands tied by the limits of national security laws, even though the intelligence says foreign powers meddled in the leadership race that Poilievre won. The public is left with an incomplete and alarming picture, and the government suggests it may have to stay that way.
Other parliamentarians have chosen to go into some detail, some more than others. It's a long way away from a proof, and that's why I think the idea that we can talk about individuals or names without having a higher degree of reliability is very dangerous.
Elizabeth May and Jagmeet Singh have both had the chance to read the full and unredacted version of the shocking report on foreign interference. But their interpretations of it lead to two very different conclusions.
I have no worries about anyone in the House of Commons.
The MPs that are involved, wittingly or unwittingly, are they traitors to Canada?
They are indeed traitors to the country.
But I am vastly relieved.
I'm not relieved at all. Nor, in fact, I am more disturbed.
There is no list of MPs who have shown disloyalty to Canada.
We must find a way to let MPs who are named in this report know that we know what they're up to.
That top-secret report alleges some parliamentarians have conspired with foreign actors to interfere in Canadian politics. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh joins me now. Mr. Singh, welcome back to the show. It's good to speak with you.
Good to be here. Thanks so much.
I wonder if you can help me reconcile your interpretation of this report with Elizabeth May's interpretation of this report. She says she was relieved. You say you are more alarmed than ever. How do we parse that?
I think two parts. One is that I'm not here to debate another MP, but I can tell you I came into the report, or my approach was, there were some very serious conclusions drawn by the NSICOP committee, and they put that into a report. These are folks that received lots of intelligence, and after hearing that intelligence, reviewing those documents, they put forward a report with certain conclusions. I wanted to know, one of the things I wanted to know is whether the unredacted version would confirm those conclusions or would it weaken those conclusions. And I can say very concretely that having read the unredacted version only bolsters the conclusions. And I think about paragraph 164 in particular, and for folks that want to follow along, please look it up. Paragraph 164 outlines very specific elements that they summarized. And each of those areas that are summarized are further explained in the unredacted version. But we've got clear examples of breach of confidential or sensitive information from Canadian parliamentarians given to foreign intelligence officers knowingly. There's areas that are semi-witting and witting, but it goes to a number of things where compromised information is shared that hurts Canada, and that to me is very, very alarming. And having read the unredacted version, it only confirms those conclusions and leaves me more worried than before.
Okay, I have the redacted version, the public report in front of me, and I'm looking at paragraph 164, which is on page 67. And I'm not going to read it all, but the bullet points are that some parliamentarians have been communicating frequently with foreign missions before or during political campaigns, accepting knowingly or through willful blindness funds or benefits from foreign missions, providing foreign diplomatic officials with privileged information, responding to requests of foreign officials to influence colleagues, and providing information learned in confidence from the government to a known intelligence officer of a foreign state. These are obviously very serious things. Elizabeth May has read those, says she is very concerned about the issue of foreign interference, but she says she is reassured about the existing composition of the House of Commons, even having read the same thing you read. Do you share her assessment that the existing House of Commons is not compromised to a tremendous degree?
I'll give a quick caveat and then I'll respond to that. This is based on what is available and what you just read in the publicly available report. My reading of the publicly available report makes it not clear. It makes me continue to be very concerned. But more so, I'm not concerned about parliamentarians. like me sitting in Parliament. I'm concerned about what this means, those very serious allegations about parliamentarians and about those serious behaviors, which in the report it summarizes that some of it should be illegal, all of it is unethical. My response to that is what that means for Canadians who are living with and experiencing foreign interference. I'm thinking about people that have left countries where they're threatened or harassed because of their political activism or their concern about the human rights track record of a country, coming to Canada hoping to be free here and facing the same threats and same intimidation. And that to me is what's alarming, that there are allegations in this report of parliamentarians engaging in behavior that is so serious that for Canadians who are living with that right now, they're still feeling unsettled, and they should be unsettled given that report.
No, look, and I agree with you in terms of the alarming nature of these conclusions from the NSI-COP committee, and they say that a lot of these things should be illegal or are illegal, but unlikely to lead to criminal charges because of a failure to address this by the current government and former governments to create sort of a set of laws to deal with this. But when you spoke to reporters yesterday, your comments, you slipped back and forth between tenses a few times, and I appreciate you're trying to be careful and not end up in jail for violating laws. But it left a lot of people with the impression you're suggesting that current MPs are party to these particular offenses that are spelled out in this key paragraph 164. Is that what you are trying to say, that there are current members of Parliament who did this, or are you satisfied that no members of Parliament currently sitting in the House of Commons are guilty of these particular unethical, possibly illegal actions?
I can only point us back to the report, and the wording of the report leaves it open. And
right.
I would again highlight that those allegations are very serious, and you can read that public report and have deep concerns. I have read the unredacted version, and I have even more concerns. I can leave it at that.
Okay, so you won't say one way or another if someone is sitting in the House of Commons, because this report deals with 2018 to now, and we've had the 2019 election, the 2021 election, there's been churn and turnover. So when they talk about parliamentarians across multiple elections, it doesn't automatically mean someone's in the House of Commons right now who did this stuff, right?
I would say that the publicly available document doesn't preclude that or exclude that, one way or the other. But it makes it clear that there is an ongoing serious threat, and that language is very purposely in the public report. I agree with those conclusions.
Okay, it's a difficult situation, though. You would agree, I think, Mr. Singh, for journalists, for Canadians, for voters, and for parliamentarians, not to know explicitly if this is something that is a continuing issue inside the Parliament or is a past issue inside the Parliament.
Well, I think the public report makes it clear that this is not something that's been resolved, that this is an ongoing concern, and they're deeply concerned.
The broad issue of foreign
Canadians should be
interference.
concerned.
The broad issue of foreign interference, or these specific actions by parliamentarians, has not been resolved.
I think the public report makes it clear that the actions of parliamentarians that are concerning is not resolved. That is not a matter that's resolved. The public report makes it clear that this is something that they are concerned about, and with good reason.
Okay, I want to ask you about something else you said yesterday. You said yesterday that you saw in this report that you were targeted. Now, we've known that you were warned of a possible threat against your personal security as a Sikh Canadian, and the issue that we've been talking about since the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Is that what you're talking about when you said you've read in this report that you were targeted, or was it another issue that you learned about in this?
I can't point to this report specifically and speak about that, but I can say in general that I can confirm that I am indeed a target of foreign interference. And I wanted folks to know that, because it's something that worries me personally. It's something that I'm worried about, but more so I think about what that means for Canadians. I'm an elected official, leader of a political party, and the fact that I can be the target of foreign interference, what does that mean for people that aren't elected, that don't have the same resources and the same access to security or safety? It is something that should be alarming and should be disturbing that could happen to a leader of a political party, and that it is ongoing to Canadians right now, that Canadians live in constant worry of foreign interference, is something we have to take with the utmost seriousness, and we should see more response and a better protection for Canadians.
Well, paragraph 36 of the public report references India demonstrating its intent and capability to engage in foreign interference through media manipulation, and a summary of redacted information, Mr. Singh says, these sentences described an example of efforts to discredit a political party leader using materials drafted by Indian intelligence organizations. Is that referring to you?
I can't respond to that directly since it is redacted information, but I can just confirm that I am aware of that the fact that I am a target by foreign interference, and that is something that, while personally alarming, should really ring the alarm bells for overall for Canadians that live with this. And I think about not just Canadians that have come from India, but those who've come from China and Iran, as those are the countries that have largely been where people, Canadians say that they continue to feel those threats. I just want to highlight how serious this is for so many Canadians that have made Canada their home, hoping to be free from this. They're still living with this fear.
You said yesterday that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has done nothing, taken no action since getting this information at some point in March. What is it specifically you think he should have done? Are you talking about policy changes, legislative changes, or actions against individual parliamentarians? What is it you think the Prime Minister should have done in the past number of weeks that you have seen no evidence of action?
I can give one example because it's publicly available and it's been publicly disclosed. Is the example of Mr. Dong. In that case, it is clear that he knew and in his actions implicitly accepted a certain level of foreign interference. That sends a message that it is fair game for foreign powers, for foreign governments to continue to try to influence or manipulate or interfere with directly with MPs. The fact that he accepted a certain level, I think that was wrong. I think his approach to that was wrong, and that's one example that's in public.
Right.
But given what I've read, I made it very clear that I think it again confirms that the Prime Minister has had knowledge and has not acted on it. And I also was very critical of the leader of the Conservative Party, because I think it's important for people to know the choices there, and the fact that the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, has a report that indicates clear allegations directed towards the Conservative Party leadership races, and he has not deigned to even look at this information, to me disqualifies him as leader. It's a failure of leadership that he doesn't even want to know what is impacting his own party directly in these allegations outlined by NCCOP. And
Okay.
that to me is a failure of leadership.
I do want to ask you more specifically on Mr. Poilievre, but just I want to go back to the Han Dong issue.
Sure.
The Prime Minister testified at the public inquiry on this that he felt the information they were presented with was inconclusive. Jeremy Broadhurst from the Liberal Party said much the same thing about the intelligence they were provided on what had happened in Don Valley North. So based on that, what is it that you think Justin Trudeau should have done with Mr. Dong in the time since?
Well, what he eventually did is remove him from caucus.
Well, he removed himself. He announced himself he was stepping out, right?
Well, that decision is something that the Prime Minister could have done on his own. And he could have done on his own as soon as he got the information. I mean, think about what leaders do. We vet MPs, and someone can be vetted out because of a very egregious tweet. Mm-hmm. The fact that you've got intelligence that has been raised to you as the leader, as the Prime Minister, and it doesn't in any way trigger action, to me really shows a lack of seriousness with respect to foreign interference and the responsibility of a leader. And that's why I made this allegation, and I maintain it, that to me it looks like Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre are more interested in protecting their own political outcomes and their own parties rather than protecting our country. And there are certain times where you've got to be very clear that the country comes first. And this is one of those examples.
So it sounds to me like you're saying, just as a final point on Mr. Dong, that the Prime Minister should have kicked him out of the caucus before he ever had the opportunity to resign on his own, should not have allowed him to run as a Liberal in the last elections, and definitely should not take him back and allow him to run the next time.
Absolutely. Once you've got that intelligence, and based on our vetting, we vet people for egregious tweets or an egregious post that shows something that's deeply offensive to Canadians. I mean, the intelligence briefing where we know that there was an intelligence briefing concerning foreign interference for the candidate should cause some serious concern about that candidate moving forward. And leaders have the power to do that. And that's why I've said that Pierre Poilievre has a similar responsibility to make sure he's not allowing people that are the subject of foreign interference in his caucus. I have that same responsibility. I've read the documents, and as a result, based on the information that I have, there's no further action that I need to take.
But is there action Mr. Poilievre needs to take based on what you've read as regards to his caucus as it currently exists?
Well, he already has the publicly available information that his his party's leadership races.
No, but
subject of foreign interference.
and I do want to ask
Yes,
about
he
that.
Absolutely needs to take action.
No, that's about his party operations, about his caucus, about the MPs who sit in the Conservative caucus. Is there something Mr. Poilievre should be doing but can't do because he hasn't read the report?
I can't get into details because of national security, but what I've said and I maintain is that every party leader should look at this report and get the unredacted version, get the special clearance, the security clearance in order to do so, and make that determination themselves. That is what a responsible leader should do. And Pierre Poilievre has not done that. So I can rest it there that he needs to look at this document, show what real leadership is, which he's failed to show so far, and learn what the allegations are in relation to his party, and make sure that he can confirm that he's read information that touches on foreign interference broadly.
So what you've read about the Conservative leadership races, the allegations that are there, that China interfered, I guess, in the race that Mr. O'Toole won, and India interfered in the race that Mr. Poilievre won, is my understanding of what is spelled out in the public document. Are you saying that there's clear enough information there that if Mr. Poilievre read it, he would see clear problems in his own party's leadership operations that he could take action on as leader, and that is not happening because he refuses to read it?
I can't get into the details of the report, but I would say very clearly that given that those allegations are there in the report, there are more details in the unredacted version. He should absolutely, if he has any interest in being a leader and protecting the country, he should absolutely read that report, and then he should take action.
Okay.
Because he's not taking action and he's not reading the report, we've requested that the public inquiry include the Conservative leadership races in addition to in addition to elections, because it is that serious. This is something that requires more scrutiny. In the case of foreign interference, it thrives on secrecy. It thrives on not being willing to look at the information. It thrives on people not taking action. I believe a leader should look at the information, take action, and that's what I'm doing.
NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh, thank you so much for your time today, sir.
Thank you.
But all of this led to yet another caution today from Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
The advice I got from the RCMP and from the Department of Justice is to not comment on specific intelligence elements. It's a long way away from a proof, and that's why I think the idea that we can talk about individuals or names without having a higher degree of reliability is very dangerous.
It's time to bring in the Friday Power Panel. Shachi Kurl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute. The Globe and Mail's Kelly Kreiderman is in Calgary. Mia Robson is a parliamentary reporter for the Canadian Press. And here with me in the studio, Marie Vestel is an editorial writer for Le Devoir. Happy Friday, everyone. Good to see you all. Mia, I'll start with you. I don't know if you've read the secret report. I was listening to Dominic LeBlanc. No. Oh, well, that's too bad. A proof is a proof. It reminds me of that statement, I think, by Jean Chrétien. What's your take on what we learned, didn't learn, or got more confused about as this week went on?
Yeah, it was a bit of whiplash this week. I mean, you have one leader who says, well, not really anything to see here, I feel better. And another leader who said, oh, I'm more alarmed than ever. And then you have the Liberals who are basically saying, we can't say anything. The Bloc Québécois, who's sort of come out and said, well, I think they're all being silly, or they're all, lying to you. And sure, I'll get the clearance eventually to read it, but for now, everybody's wrong. And then you have the Conservatives who won't even get the clearance, and Pierre Poilievre himself hasn't seen the report, sort of digging his heels in on that front. So, we have no more answers or no more clarity at the end of this week than we did last week when that report dropped, and it really did kind of drop like a bombshell, at least on Parliament Hill. The idea that there are MPs that could still be sitting in the House of Commons today that wittingly are cooperating somehow with foreign governments. Up until now, it was sort of a little bit sort of more obscure people that might have been involved in this. The idea that these are people sort of right inside the party benches, the party caucuses, it dropped like a bombshell, and we have no more clarity. It's really damaging to democracy. It's damaging to politics. It's really not. I don't know if the people who sort of started the foreign interference, if this was their goal, but if it was, I mean, it's working very well.
Well, Marie, we're left to parse a lot of things and try to piece together segments of the redacted report, what Jagmeet Singh said, what Elizabeth May said, and try to reconcile all of these things. And it just leaves me feeling there has to be a better way for NSICOP, NSICOP, whatever you want to call it, that committee of parliamentarians, to explain these issues and their findings to the public.
Except it seems like it's pretty limited, right? The intelligence commissioner, I was reading a story about your colleague, Catherine Tunney, intelligence commissioner is saying, even the fact of saying you're concerned or not indicates to those actors doing foreign interference whether you've caught on or not.
A sleeper agent hasn't been found is kind of what you're saying.
Being vague seems like it's almost a bit too much. I definitely think Mr. Singh maybe went a bit too far when he said, for example, that he's not going to expel any members of the NDP caucus. That to me seems to be coming really close to saying things that he's seen or not seen in the report.
Well, he's saying his caucus is innocent, is essentially what he is saying, right?
Yeah, but then
and we have to take him at his word.
If Mr. says the same thing, then we know who the you know what I mean? Like it's process of elimination.
Yeah.
So it seems like, I mean, I obviously don't have the answer to how you can reveal these things without getting into too much trouble or without, breaking national security laws. But it does feel like we're really getting into partisan territory, which is not helpful at all. I thought that Mr. Singh's press conference was almost like, as an excuse very early on, used to accuse Justin Trudeau of not having done enough and Pierre Poilievre of not wanting to know enough. And I didn't think the tone was necessarily helpful to the conversation and the confidence that is being shaken in our democracy, to me, is point.
Right, and a scrum, Shachi, is the worst way to do something like that because it descended into chaos. I appreciate it when politicians talk to us, but I don't think that format enabled people's understanding to grow in any sense. Well, what's your thoughts on where we're on this now, Shachi?
Well, at some point, this conversation needs to shift from, and I don't know when we're going to get there, frankly, but it needs to shift from name names, what's in the report, what's not in the report. This drip, drip, drip it's interminable. We've had, I think, as Mia said, or you said, the week of whiplash around it. But the wheel now, at some point, is going to have to turn to how do we mitigate against these issues, and where Jagmeet Singh is making some points that I believe are cogent. Whether or not he's really helping matters by pussyfooting around what is in the report or what's not in the report has to do with the lack of leadership. So we can't, there's a retrospective lens on this, which everybody is very focused on once again this week. Where do we go next? What happens next in terms of Parliament coming together and the leaders coming together and their caucuses coming together, maybe without the people who might be named in that report? I have no idea. I haven't seen it either. Saying, okay, what are the rules that we're going to implement in the future that can mitigate and protect against these allegations of possible witting or unwitting cooperations in terms of foreign interference, right? Like there has to be a way to move the conversation and move the policy and the structure into a place where this does not happen again, or it does not happen, full stop. And so that's, I think, where we need to be focused at the moment. And I don't know that anyone or anything is being served by the ongoing what's in the report, what's not in the report, who's read the report, who hasn't.
But Kelly, part of the thing is there is a consensus in a lot of intelligence community experts and the committee itself that wrote this report that the leaders need to be informed, have an intelligent conversation, and work together. And if Mr. Poilievre won't read it, as he says he won't because he doesn't want to be bound by it, how do you get all the parties together to work together on safeguarding Canadian democracy at the federal, provincial, municipal, NGO, boardroom, university, and corporate level?
You could have the Liberal government, which has had, the Prime Minister's office has had this information for months. You could have had them working on a format to address these allegations in a serious way and to name names as needed. I think part of the problem here, part of the drip, drip, drip that we're talking about, that Sachi is talking about, is this has been going on for a year. We have a Prime Minister that appointed a former Governor General to do a very cursory look at foreign interference, and now, and that he was only pushed to do a more fulsome investigation led by Justice Hogue by the opposition parties, and now you have a situation where there's very little trust about the government of the day handling this. And I think the problem with this week is whether you believe Elizabeth May's interpretation of the report or Jagmeet Singh's interpretation of the report, it allows your worldview to be reinforced. Either that this isn't a big deal in the House of Commons, although, of course, Ms. May did say that foreign interference is a serious issue more broadly, but she said it's not an issue. She doesn't feel concerned about the House of Commons right at this moment. It allows you to reinforce your worldview of whether you think this is a serious issue or not. And I think that's the problem all along, that foreign interference is about sowing mistrust in democratic institutions, but it's also how Western governments confront it. And so far, the lack of seriousness that we've seen from this Liberal government has continued. And I was struck this week by former NDP leader Tom Mulcair saying he wouldn't sign and get access to the report as either, lest he be very constrained by what he can say. And I don't know if Ms. May and Jagmeet Singh seen the report. Has that helped Canadians to this point? Has that helped them understand? And is this a matter that should be left to parties at this point?
Well, but here's a question. And look, the NSI COP report, if you read it, Kelly, as I'm sure you have, and people should read it at home, there is a litany of failures by the current Liberal government to respond to previous NSI COP reports to make changes. So that's granted. But how does Justin Trudeau fix problems with the Conservative leadership race? That's a job for Pierre Poilievre and his party, and both the last two leadership races are implicated in this. The Liberals have nomination problems. They say they're not fixing them. They'll have to live with the consequences of that. But how does he deal with the Conservatives? The Conservatives have to do that.
Well, you could see a scenario where Elections Canada does set rules, some party rules at some point, if parties continue to not take this issue seriously themselves. But right now, we do not know the full extent of it. And I think that's a problem. I think the government, whether that's through the inquiry or not, needs a process for investigating the claims in this report and airing them in some way.
Right. Mia, what are your thoughts?
One of the things that's alarmed me the most in all of this is why we're just learning about some of this now. I mean, we had a public inquiry. I went back and forth with several different government members and staff members, mostly in the last week, about whether or not the documents that were seen by this committee were also seen by the public inquiry. And some said yes, some said no. Today, Dominic LeBlanc suggested that maybe they haven't seen them. So it sort of also damaged my faith in what that public inquiry has seen. And again, if we don't have some of these answers, I'm not talking about naming names, but Canadians need to have the confidence that the people they've elected, the people that are passing the laws in this country, are not actually wittingly working with foreign operators. The government's inability to even answer that question to Canadians is a massive problem.
So, Marie, Jagmeet Singh saying the issue of MPs being compromised by foreign governments is not resolved, and him also talking about Han Dong. I don't know if that's the extent of it as he sees it in the current parliament or not. I mean, what are your thoughts on that and what the other panelists said?
Well, just a few things that Mia and Kelly said. I think that the mandate of the commissioner is mostly to look at elections, not people sitting in the House between elections. And she did say in her interim report that she was a little concerned about the timeline and the broadness, if that's the right word, of her mandate. So I think it's a good idea to ask her to look at it, because clearly hoping that parties will govern themselves accordingly is not working. But I am concerned that she just doesn't have the time or the resources to actually do this, because, I mean, let's not forget, she's supposed to give a final report by the end of this year. And so I don't know if that's the solution. And then in terms of parties governing themselves, they clearly showed that they won't. The Liberals aren't going to change their nominations. Mr. Poilievre is not getting security clearance. And giving it to Elections Canada to govern nominations or leadership races, or at least surveil what's going on, is a good idea. But I think parties would have to agree to that, and it doesn't look like they are going to. I think there's a risk for Mr. Poilievre, and all the criticism of the Liberals' failure to act earlier on this are completely valid. But I think there is a risk at some point for Mr. Poilievre to start looking like he's not taking national security seriously. At some point, he could, according to polls, will be prime minister. He will get security clearance. He will get secret information. And he needs to learn how to navigate that. And by just not wanting to see this report, which is more damaging than the Johnston report, because this is people in his caucus, it's his leadership race, at a certain point, you can't just try to indulge in plausible deniability and not take an issue like this seriously.
Shachi, I got about 30 seconds. You need a glass of water? I just saw you coughing there. You okay? I just wanted to ask, on this going to the justice, on this going to the public inquiry, though we still don't know if she's going to take it up because big mandate, short calendar. She can't name names. She can't issue findings of guilt without process. Like the conviction and indictment demand that is out there for Justice Ogg to provide, it's beyond her capacity right now. So what is the value of sending it there?
It's a good question. I think ultimately this goes back to, for those who want names named, who want to understand what's happened, they may ultimately be disappointed by this. There are reasons that she can't do this. If these names leak, there are going to be ethical conversations as to, do you publish, do you go with them, do names get named, because of the implications associated with, again, this is intelligence, it's not evidence. Sometimes both of those things can be the same thing and sometimes they might not be. But going back to what Marie was saying, this is a calculated risk for Pierre Poilievre. It's a risk, but it's a calculated risk. It's also a calculated risk for Justin Trudeau to just sort of be diffident, try and take it on the chin, and try to let it move the news cycle and exit the news cycle. It did that once before. We had a firestorm that brewed. The report and the appointment of Justice Ogg came into place. It went away. And I can tell you this, when you ask Canadians, are you concerned about foreign interference? Do you think it's a serious problem? They say yes. When you ask them unprompted, what is the most important issue for you today? This is not anywhere in the top 10. And so the political risk is a calculated one, because I think, both parties, and they are going to be the parties going head to head in the next election, are counting on the fact that this is not going to move the needle for either of them, one way or the other politically. So, the theater of it dominates the panels like ours on a Friday and keeps it in the news for a couple weeks. But does it go away, and do they go back to getting on the messages that they want to convey? I think that's the bigger issue.
All right, we got to take a